The speech serves as an insightful exploration into the theme of spiritual awakening and personal responsibility, underscoring the profound truth that within every individual lies an inherent wisdom capable of guiding them through the complexities of life. It emphasizes that spiritual growth is not a passive state that simply unfolds without conscious involvement, but rather an active journey that requires one to awaken to their inner truth and to willingly embrace the responsibilities that come with it. Often, people move through life driven by external circumstances, reacting to events without fully acknowledging their own power to influence and shape outcomes. The speech challenges this passive approach by inviting listeners to step into a place of awareness, where they see themselves not as victims of life's events, but as conscious participants. It is in this shift from unconscious living to mindful engagement that true spiritual awakening begins to blossom. The message presents the idea that wisdom is not something that needs to be sought in distant places or in the hands of others. Rather, it exists within, waiting to be accessed through reflection, openness, and the willingness to listen to the still, small voice inside. This inner wisdom, the speech suggests, is both a guide and a companion on the journey of life. However, tapping into it requires stillness, honesty, and a commitment to personal truth. It involves examining one's patterns, beliefs, and choices with clarity, recognizing where they are out of alignment with one's highest self. Alongside the call to awaken to inner wisdom, the speech equally stresses the significance of taking personal responsibility for one's actions and the consequences they generate. It teaches that spiritual awakening without responsibility remains incomplete. It is not enough to know, one must also act in accordance with that knowing. This concept reinforces the principle that wisdom is lived, not merely understood on an intellectual level. When individuals assume responsibility for their behavior, decisions, and reactions, they step into a position of empowerment. They no longer blame circumstances, others, or fate for the state of their lives. Instead, they recognize that they hold the power to change, adapt, and create new possibilities. This shift into personal responsibility is not always easy. It requires courage to face the parts of oneself that might have been neglected, denied, or feared. It asks individuals to stop hiding behind excuses or waiting for others to provide solutions. Rather, it calls them to stand in their own authority, acknowledging that they are the architects of their reality. This process can be confronting, as it shines a light on habits of avoidance, patterns of dependency, and tendencies to abdicate power. Yet it is also deeply liberating, for in assuming responsibility, one accesses the profound freedom to choose, to create, and to transform. Moreover, the speech implies that the journey of spiritual awakening and responsibility is not a solitary path, nor is it a destination. It is an ongoing practice requiring vigilance, patience, and compassion toward oneself. Each day offers new opportunities to deepen one's awareness, to correct missteps, and to make choices that reflect higher wisdom. In this sense, the path is both humbling and empowering, reminding individuals that while perfection is not the goal, sincerity, honesty, and effort are essential. The speech also delicately suggests that as individuals awaken and assume responsibility for their own lives, they become beacons of inspiration for others. Their actions, choices, and way of being ripple outward, impacting families, communities, and even broader circles. In this way, personal responsibility becomes a sacred service, contributing to the healing and upliftment of the collective. It teaches that when each person does their inner work, they contribute to the creation of a more conscious, compassionate, and balanced world. Finally, the speech encourages listeners to approach this journey with kindness toward themselves. It acknowledges that awakening and assuming responsibility can bring up feelings of guilt, regret, or overwhelm. Yet, these feelings are not to be feared or suppressed, but seen as invitations to deepen self-awareness and to offer oneself forgiveness and understanding. Through this compassionate approach, individuals can move forward with greater ease and grace, allowing the journey of spiritual awakening and responsibility to unfold as a natural, life-affirming process. The speech also brings to light the essential role of guidance and support during times of confusion and uncertainty, illuminating a core principle in personal and spiritual development, that while the journey is individual, it is not meant to be walked alone. Human beings, by nature, encounter phases where the road ahead seems clouded, decisions feel overwhelming, and the inner voice of clarity is drowned out by external noise or inner turmoil. It is in these moments that the wisdom of seeking guidance becomes paramount, not as an act of dependency, but as an acknowledgement of the interconnectedness and support systems available to all. Guidance, as presented through the speech, is not always about receiving answers in the form of direct solutions. More often, it is about finding a mirror that reflects back to the individual their own truths and strengths that they may have temporarily forgotten or overlooked. In this way, the speech honors the idea that wise counsel does not disempower the seeker, but instead empowers them to rediscover their own inner compass. The presence of a compassionate, discerning voice can serve as a catalyst for self-reflection, helping individuals untangle the mental and emotional webs that have blurred their perception. This form of support is most valuable when it emerges from a place of humility and non-judgment, offering suggestions and perspectives rather than directives. The speech underlines that effective guidance respects the autonomy of the individual, recognizing that no one can walk the path for another, but they can indeed offer light along the way. Through shared stories, questions, and reflections, mentors and guides can help individuals broaden their vision, see beyond immediate obstacles, and reconnect with their deeper purpose and values. In acknowledging the significance of support, the speech dispels the common misconception that needing guidance is a sign of weakness or failure. Instead, it reframes this as a courageous and wise act, an expression of self, love, and responsibility. By seeking guidance in moments of confusion, individuals demonstrate a willingness to grow, to learn, and to evolve beyond their current limitations. They accept that, while they have inner wisdom, there are times when the noise of fear, doubt, and overwhelm can obscure its voice, and reaching out for support can provide the clarity necessary to navigate through these challenging moments. The speech also highlights that support can come in many forms, not only from spiritual teachers or mentors, but also from friends, family, literature, nature, or moments of quiet contemplation. It encourages individuals to remain open to the various ways in which guidance may appear, reminding them that the universe often sends the right message, person, or experience at the perfect moment, if one remains open and receptive. Furthermore, the speech gently introduces the principle that guidance during times of confusion is not solely about solving immediate problems, but also about cultivating a long-term perspective. When individuals are caught in the urgency of decision-making, they can easily become trapped in short-sightedness, focusing only on immediate relief or comfort. Guidance, when offered wisely, helps to broaden this view, reminding individuals to consider the greater good, the long-term consequences, and the alignment of their choices with their values and vision. In this way, wise support does not provide escape routes but pathways towards sustainable growth and integrity. The message also addresses the emotional aspects of confusion, how it can trigger feelings of frustration, helplessness, or despair. The speech encourages embracing these feelings with compassion rather than resistance, recognizing them as natural parts of the human experience. Through guidance, individuals can learn to hold space for these emotions without being consumed by them, allowing the discomfort of confusion to become a teacher rather than an enemy. It is through this compassionate space holding that clarity often begins to surface, not as a sudden lightning bolt, but as a gentle unfolding. Lastly, the speech teaches that the process of receiving guidance is also an opportunity to practice humility. It is an acknowledgement that no one has all the answers all the time, and that learning from the experiences and perspectives of others enriches one's own journey. In this way, the act of seeking support becomes an act of honoring the collective wisdom that exists in the world, recognizing that each person, story, and encounter can offer valuable insights. This humility opens the heart and mind to receive wisdom from unexpected places and helps cultivate a deeper sense of trust in the flow of life. In times of confusion, when the path feels lost or obscured, the willingness to seek and receive guidance becomes a bridge back to clarity, purpose, and peace. It is a reminder that support is not outside the realm of spiritual practice, but an integral part of it, nurturing the soul through the compassionate sharing of wisdom, perspective, and love. The speech deeply emphasizes the principle that service and humility are essential foundations for true leadership, presenting an insightful exploration of how authentic authority is not derived from control, status, or dominance, but from a sincere commitment to serve others with compassion and wisdom. This understanding represents a shift from traditional concepts of leadership, which often focus on power and hierarchy, toward a more spiritually rooted and people-centered approach. In this vision of leadership, humility is not seen as weakness, but as a strength that opens the heart and mind to the needs of others, fostering environments where cooperation, respect, and mutual support flourish. At the heart of this message is the idea that leadership begins within. It is not something that is merely bestowed by external titles or positions, but something that is cultivated through self-awareness, personal responsibility, and the willingness to be of service. The speech reminds listeners that anyone, regardless of their role or status, has the potential to lead by example, embodying the values of humility, patience, and kindness in their interactions. This form of leadership is quiet yet powerful, inspiring others not through force but through integrity, authenticity, and compassion. Service, as described in the speech, is an expression of love in action. It is a way of contributing to the greater good, supporting others in their growth, and creating spaces where everyone feels valued and heard. In this context, service is not about self-sacrifice or neglecting one's own needs, but about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings and acting in ways that uplift and empower both the self and the community. When leaders approach their roles from this place of service, they create relationships built on trust, respect, and collaboration, fostering environments where individuals feel safe to express themselves, contribute their talents, and grow. Humility is presented as the cornerstone of such service-oriented leadership. It is the quality that allows leaders to listen deeply, admit mistakes, and remain open to learning from others. The speech highlights that humility does not diminish one's abilities or achievements. Rather, it enriches them by grounding them in the awareness that all wisdom and strength come from a higher source, and that no one is above learning, growth, or correction. Humble leaders recognize that they do not have all the answers and that they, too, are part of the learning journey. This attitude not only enhances their effectiveness, but also models for others the importance of continuous self-reflection and growth. The speech also contrasts the qualities of service-oriented leadership with those of ego-driven leadership, which tends to operate from a place of fear, control, and insecurity. When leadership is based on ego, it seeks to dominate, impose, and protect its own interests, often at the expense of the collective. Such leadership can create environments of fear, competition, and disconnection, where individuals feel disempowered and unseen. By contrast, the speech encourages a model of leadership that is rooted in love, humility, and service, creating spaces where people feel valued, supported, and inspired to bring forth their best selves. Moreover, the speech gently teaches that true leadership is about creating structures and systems that are sustainable, balanced, and rooted in fairness. Leaders who operate from humility and service are not interested in hoarding power or making themselves indispensable. Instead, they seek to empower others, delegate responsibilities, and create systems that allow for shared participation and growth. In doing so, they foster resilience within their communities, ensuring that leadership is a collective and evolving process rather than the responsibility of a single individual. The speech also touches on the emotional and spiritual rewards of service and humility in leadership. It suggests that when individuals lead from this place, they experience a deep sense of fulfillment, purpose, and connection. Rather than feeling burdened by the weight of responsibility, they feel energized by the opportunity to contribute, to witness the growth of others, and to participate in the unfolding of collective wisdom and harmony. This joy is not rooted in personal accolades, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that one's actions have made a positive difference. Finally, the speech inspires listeners to reflect on their own roles as leaders in whatever context they find themselves, whether in families, workplaces, communities, or spiritual groups, and to consider how they might embody greater humility and service in these roles. It reminds them that leadership is not a destination or an identity to claim, but a practice, a way of being in the world that honors the sacredness of all life and seeks always to uplift, support, and nurture the growth of others. The speech brings to focus the empowering aspect of receiving and applying practical advice in one's spiritual and everyday life. It illustrates that spiritual insight, when combined with pragmatic steps, becomes a powerful tool for transformation, helping individuals navigate the often challenging terrain of their responsibilities, relationships, and life choices. The essence of this keynote is the understanding that spiritual wisdom is not meant to exist in abstraction or remain confined to meditation rooms or sacred texts. Instead, it is to be lived, integrated into the daily practices and routines that form the foundation of one's life. This speech encourages individuals to see practical advice as a bridge between the spiritual and the material, a bridge that makes lofty ideals accessible and actionable. In the speech, it is suggested that when people are overwhelmed by the complexities of life, be it in their families, work, or communities, they can often feel paralyzed, unable to see a clear path forward. In such moments, practical advice serves as a grounding force. It offers step-by-step guidance, helping to break down what may seem like insurmountable challenges into manageable actions. This approach restores a sense of agency and confidence, reminding individuals that they are capable of addressing difficulties in tangible ways, no matter how daunting they may initially appear. The message also highlights that practical advice is most effective when it arises from wisdom, compassion, and experience. When shared with kindness and respect, it has the power to open doors of understanding, enabling individuals to see solutions they may have been blind to. The speech makes it clear that such advice is not about imposing rigid rules or controlling others, but about offering tools and strategies that allow individuals to take ownership of their lives. This fosters a sense of empowerment as people learn to make decisions that honor their personal needs while also considering the well-being of those around them. Moreover, the speech teaches that practical advice serves as a form of spiritual support, offering stability and structure in times of chaos or uncertainty. It helps individuals create order in their external lives, which in turn supports greater inner harmony. When life is organized, when responsibilities are clearly defined, when tasks are delegated effectively, when time is managed mindfully, individuals can experience a sense of peace and spaciousness. This allows them to connect more deeply with their inner wisdom, creativity, and sense of purpose. Importantly, the speech also acknowledges that implementing practical advice requires openness and humility. It involves recognizing that there may be more efficient, compassionate, or balanced ways to approach life's demands than one is currently using. This openness to learning and growth is itself a spiritual practice, as it challenges the ego's tendency to resist change or to insist on doing things the hard way. By embracing practical advice, individuals not only improve their external circumstances, but also develop inner qualities such as flexibility, patience, and a willingness to learn from others. This speech gently reminds that while practical advice can offer significant benefits, it must always be aligned with one's values and personal truth. It encourages individuals to discern which pieces of advice resonate with them and support their highest good, rather than blindly following all suggestions. In this way, the speech promotes a balanced approach, one that honors both external wisdom and internal guidance. It teaches that advice should never replace personal discernment, but rather complement it, providing additional perspectives that can enhance decision-making and problem-solving. Another key aspect of this keynote is the recognition that when individuals organize their lives in practical, thoughtful ways, they not only benefit themselves but also create ripple effects within their communities. Efficient, harmonious, and mindful living models to others how to balance responsibilities with grace and integrity. It fosters environments where people feel respected, supported, and free to contribute their own gifts. In this way, practical advice becomes a catalyst not only for personal transformation but for collective harmony. Finally, the speech emphasizes that the application of practical advice is not a one-time event but an ongoing practice. Life is dynamic, and new challenges constantly emerge. As such, individuals are encouraged to continually seek wisdom, remain flexible, and be willing to adjust their approaches as circumstances evolve. This continuous application of spiritual principles in daily actions strengthens the connection between the inner and outer worlds, leading to a life that is not only organized and effective, but also deeply meaningful and spiritually fulfilling. It is through this integration of the practical and the spiritual that individuals can experience true peace, purpose, and empowerment in their daily lives. The speech draws attention to the profound spiritual lesson that true inner peace comes from recognizing one's role in the larger whole, fostering cooperation, and promoting fairness rather than control or domination. This perspective challenges commonly held notions of leadership and success, which often emphasize personal achievement, authority, and competition. Instead, the speech advocates for a model of living and interacting with others that is grounded in humility, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. It teaches that peace does not emerge from the suppression of others or from enforcing one's will, but from understanding that we are all interconnected parts of a greater system, each with unique roles and contributions that are equally valuable. When individuals begin to see themselves as part of an interconnected web of relationships, communities, and ecosystems, their attitudes toward others naturally shift. The desire to control diminishes, and in its place arises a genuine willingness to collaborate and create spaces where everyone feels heard, seen, and valued. This speech emphasizes that this recognition brings with it a deep sense of inner peace, as the struggle to dominate or prove oneself superior is replaced by the understanding that one's worth is inherent and not dependent on external validation or control over others. The speech also suggests that peace arises when individuals respect the natural flow of life and understand that everything works best when balanced and harmonious. Attempting to control or manipulate situations beyond one's rightful role leads to stress, resistance, and imbalance, both within the self and in the external environment. By embracing cooperation, individuals contribute to systems that are resilient, fair, and capable of supporting the needs of all involved. This cooperative mindset is not passive but requires active participation, clear communication, and the willingness to let go of ego-driven desires in favor of collective well-being. Moreover, the speech highlights that fostering fairness in interactions and decision-making is essential for creating peaceful and harmonious relationships. Fairness ensures that all voices are heard, that responsibilities are shared equitably, and that no one is left carrying burdens alone or being denied opportunities to contribute. This principle applies not only in formal leadership roles, but also in families, friendships, workplaces, and communities. When fairness is upheld, trust grows, and people feel secure in knowing that their needs and contributions matter. This security becomes the fertile ground where inner peace can flourish, both individually and collectively. The speech also gently warns of the spiritual cost of attempting to control others or dominate situations. Such behaviors are often driven by fear of losing status, fear of being unrecognized, or fear of chaos. However, these fears only perpetuate cycles of conflict, tension, and disharmony. The speech teaches that by releasing the need to control and instead focusing on how to support, uplift, and collaborate with others, individuals release themselves from these fears and step into a more authentic and peaceful way of being. They come to understand that true strength lies not in domination, but in the ability to work harmoniously with others, to listen deeply, and to co-create solutions that honor all perspectives. In this way, the speech presents cooperation not as a compromise of one's needs or values, but as an expansion of them. By cooperating, individuals open themselves to the wisdom and strengths of others, creating richer, more creative, and more sustainable outcomes. This requires courage, as it means letting go of the illusion of control and trusting in the collective intelligence that emerges when people come together with open hearts and minds. It also requires patience, as cooperative processes may take more time and dialogue, but ultimately lead to more lasting and meaningful results. The speech further teaches that inner peace is not an isolated state achieved by retreating from the world, but a quality that emerges when individuals align their actions with values of fairness, respect, and cooperation in their daily interactions. Peace becomes a lived experience, cultivated moment by moment through the choices one makes in how to treat others, how to listen, how to share, and how to honor the interconnectedness of all life. This perspective transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for spiritual practice, where every encounter becomes a chance to embody peace, humility, and cooperation. Finally, the speech inspires listeners to reflect on their own behaviors, inviting them to examine areas of their lives where they may be clinging to control, resisting cooperation, or neglecting fairness. It encourages them to embrace these insights not with judgment but with compassion, seeing them as invitations to grow and to deepen their commitment to peace within themselves and in their relationships with others. Through this process, individuals not only cultivate greater inner harmony but also become agents of peace in the world, modeling a way of living that uplifts, supports, and honors the sacredness of all beings. The speech beautifully underlines the essential spiritual message that true freedom arises from inner transformation rather than from external circumstances. It presents the profound truth that no matter how challenging or demanding our outer environments may be, lasting peace and liberation are cultivated within the mind and heart. This message invites listeners to shift their focus from trying to control or escape external situations to nurturing a deeper relationship with themselves, their thoughts, and their inner world. The speech illustrates that when individuals understand that their sense of freedom is not dictated by what is happening around them, but by how they choose to respond, they reclaim their personal power and open the doors to authentic liberation. In the context of the speech, this lesson is shared through reflections on leadership, responsibility, and spiritual growth. It suggests that even when one is entrusted with heavy duties, complex tasks, or overwhelming circumstances, it is possible to experience freedom if one's internal state is rooted in balance, acceptance, and love. This inner freedom is not a denial of challenges, but a conscious choice to face them with grace, patience, and faith. The speech encourages individuals to see themselves not as victims of circumstances, but as empowered creators of their inner realities, capable of choosing thoughts, attitudes, and actions that bring peace and clarity regardless of what is happening externally. Furthermore, the speech explains that inner transformation involves a process of letting go of fear, resentment, control, and limiting beliefs that keep the mind trapped in cycles of suffering and struggle. This process requires self-awareness, honesty, and a willingness to confront the inner stories that keep one bound to the illusion that peace comes only when external conditions are perfect. The speech gently teaches that if people wait for the world to change before they feel free, they may wait a lifetime. True freedom is found in the present moment, in the choice to release attachment to outcomes, and in embracing life as it is with all its imperfections. This message also challenges the belief that responsibilities and freedom are opposing forces. Often people feel that their roles, duties, or obligations are cages that restrict their personal joy and growth. However, the speech presents a different view, that responsibilities can become sacred opportunities for spiritual practice and inner evolution when approached with the right mindset. Rather than seeing duties as burdens, individuals can see them as invitations to cultivate patience, compassion, discipline, and service, qualities that deepen their sense of purpose and fulfillment. In this way, the very tasks that once felt heavy or limiting can become pathways to inner freedom. Additionally, the speech highlights that inner freedom arises when individuals release the need to control everything around them and instead place their trust in a higher order, divine wisdom, or the natural unfolding of life. This does not mean abandoning action or responsibility, but rather acting from a place of surrender and flow rather than fear and resistance. When people move from this inner space of trust, their actions become more aligned, purposeful, and peaceful. They no longer feel the desperate urge to manipulate outcomes or force things to happen in a particular way. Instead, they open themselves to being guided by their inner wisdom, allowing life to unfold while maintaining their inner center. The speech also points out that inner freedom is closely tied to forgiveness and compassion. Holding on to grudges, anger, or blame keeps individuals chained to the past, preventing them from experiencing the fullness of the present moment. By choosing to forgive, not necessarily to condone harmful behavior, but to release the emotional chains that keep them bound, individuals free themselves from the pain of old wounds and create space for joy, love, and new possibilities. This act of forgiveness is not just for others, but primarily for oneself, as it lifts the burden of carrying resentment and opens the heart to greater peace. Ultimately, the speech teaches that true freedom is a state of consciousness, a way of being that is cultivated through daily practices of mindfulness, self-reflection, acceptance, and love. It is about recognizing that the only thing truly within one's control is the internal landscape, the thoughts chosen, the perspectives held, and the feelings nurtured. When this inner garden is tended with care, the storms of life may still rage outside, but they no longer have the power to uproot one's peace. This is the kind of freedom that is enduring, unshakable, and available to all, regardless of external conditions. The speech concludes by inspiring listeners to embark on this inner journey, to prioritize their inner peace above all, and to trust that by doing so, they will not only experience personal liberation, but also contribute to a more peaceful, harmonious world. By transforming themselves from within, they become living examples of freedom, radiating a presence that uplifts and inspires others to embark on their own paths of inner awakening.